do not suppose that this is the end. This is only the beginning of the reckoning. This is only the first sip, the first foretaste of a bitter cup, which will be proffered to us year by year, unless by a supreme recovery of moral health and martial vigor we arise again and take our stand for freedom as in olden times. The words of Winston Churchill, 11 months before the outbreak of hostilities in World War II.
For Europe, the 1930s was a time of crisis. Appeasement was the order of the day. Undoubtedly, Adolf Hitler could have been turned aside if decisive action had been taken early as he reoccupied the Ruhr without consent. Europe should have braced itself at the time of his conquest of the southern Germans of Austria and prevented aged Jews from scrubbing the wintered roadways of Vienna. If Hitler had been challenged at that time, the pernicious thrust toward global conflict might have been avoided. But Europe claimed peace as its inheritance, and even injustice, even genocide, and the unlawful expansion by armed might did not arouse in most people the awareness that such acts were inimical to his delusions of grandeur. What were they to do? Those who perceptively weighed the obvious evidence at hand were subjected to criticism of the most malicious nature. They had their motives challenged, as if their detractors had access somehow to the inner resources of their consciousness. It was an unpopular stand to take that Winston Churchill took, but it was right. Only 6 months prior to the war, an opinion poll in England found only 7% of Churchill's fellow Britons regarding him as a suitable successor to Neville Chamberlain as the holder of the highest office of the Crown in the United Kingdom. A difficult time, a difficult position. We, too, have had our Munichs, which have only led to the emboldening of those intent upon increasing their territorial grip on our beloved Seventh-day Adventist Church. The bitter cup has been proffered to us year by year. Just as the last half of the 1930s saw the Ruhr takeover accepted, the enforced union of Austria with Germany condoned, the acquisition of Sudetenland exonerated, and the military occupation of Bohemia meekly countenanced, so Seventh-day Adventists, alert to the ruthless destruction of one doctrinal province after another, have had their earnest cries to halt the insatiable onslaught given interpretations entirely alien to their motives. Had decisive action been taken after the first sip, how few then might have been the casualties. Brothers and sisters, it is not easy to talk about confrontation. It wasn't easy for Winston Churchill. It was a very unpopular thing to do. It isn't easy today, because sometimes we have to confront those that are our friends, those that are our associates. What are we going to do? Will we stand by and watch, or will we take a stand? Let's take a little trip through the Bible this morning. Would you open your Bible to Luke chapter 4? Jesus had spent 40 days preparing. Suddenly an angel of light appears to him in the middle of this desert after 40 days of fasting. And the angel approaches Jesus in his emaciated condition. And he says, I have been sent from your Father. I have come to help you. I have come to tell you that your test is at an end. Oh, but I guess I've made a mistake. I don't think I found the right person. You aren't the person I was sent to. I was sent to find the Son of God. You don't look like the Son of God to me. God wouldn't treat his own Son this way. I'm afraid I found that other person, that one that was cast out of heaven 4,000 years ago. I found the wrong person. Do you claim to be the Son of God? If you do, you'll have to show me and yourself by turning these stones into bread. What did Jesus do? Jesus answered him, "It is written." And then Satan came again, this time dropping the disguise, dropping the pretense, coming as himself. And look at verse 5. And the devil, taking him up unto an high mountain, showed unto him all the angels, all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And the devil said unto him, All this power will I give thee, and the glory of them, for that is delivered unto me, and to whomsoever I will, I give it. If thou therefore wilt worship me, all shall be thine. You don't have to go through the suffering that you think is ahead of you. I can show you a way around that. There's a detour. And Jesus answered and said unto him, Get thee behind me, Satan. For it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Is that confrontation? Yes, it is. Jesus confronted Satan in his challenge to the mission of Jesus Christ. Satan said, I can find you an easier way. You don't have to make it so hard on yourself. God wouldn't treat his own son like that. And Jesus said, Get thee behind me, Satan. That's confrontation. Let's go into the Old Testament. 1 Kings, chapter 18. All these are very familiar stories to us, but let's look briefly at this one again. 1 Kings 18, and beginning with verse 17. And it came to pass, when Ahab saw Elijah, that Ahab said unto him, Art thou he that troubleth Israel? And he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, in that ye have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and thou hast followed Balaam. Is that confrontation? This time not between Jesus and Satan, but between a prophet of God and the leader of Israel, the king of Israel. Thou hast followed Balaam. Look at verse 21. And Elijah came unto all the people and said, How long halt ye between two opinions? Now it's not the king, but all the people. If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word. Were the people like Europe in the 30s? The people answered him not a word. The worship of Baal had taken over the land of Israel. Under the groves and in the temples, the priests held sway, and they had allowed it to happen. They had remained silent because some of them were their friends, and they didn't want to stand up. And now it had come to this, where one man had to stand against the king and the prophets and the people to say this. And you know the rest of the story. We won't review that. Look at verse 40. The end of the story reveals the end of this confrontation. And Elijah said unto them, Take the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape. And they took them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and slew them there. That's decisive action, isn't it? Wouldn't be very popular today, I'm afraid. But Elijah, as a prophet of the Lord, knew what he must do if Israel would be saved. And he confronted. Turn to the book of Nehemiah with me. Nehemiah, chapter 4. And although Nehemiah is in the first half of our Bible, I think you're all aware that it takes place after the return from captivity, when Jerusalem lay in ruins, and Nehemiah came to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. And let's just look at some of these sequences that happen here. Chapter 4, verse 1. But it came to pass that when Sanballat heard that we builded the wall, he was wroth, and took great indignation, and mocked the Jews. And he spake before his brethren in the army of Samaria, and said, What do these feeble Jews? Will they fortify themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they make an end in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of the rubbish which are burned? Now Tobiah the Ammonite was by him, and he said, even that which they build, if a fox go up, he shall even break down their stone wall. You catch the tone of what's happening? Ridicule. These foolish, poor, insignificant people coming back to rebuild their city. What are they doing anyway? Nehemiah now, in verse 14. And I looked and rose up and said unto the nobles and to the rulers and to the rest of the people, be not ye afraid of them. Remember the Lord, which is great and terrible, and fight for your brethren, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your houses. And it came to pass, when our enemies heard that it was known unto us, and God had brought their counsel to naught, that we returned all of us to the wall, every one to his work. Confrontation called their bluff that time. And they were all able to go back to the wall because they had not been cowed by the demands and the ridicule of their enemies. But that's not all of the story. Look at verse 5. And there was a great cry of the people and of their wives against their brethren, the Jews. Now this is internal. This is not from outside. Look at verse 3. Some also were there that said, we have mortgaged our lands, vineyards, and houses, that we might buy corn because of the dearth. Going down to verse 7. Then I consulted with myself, and I rebuked the nobles and the rulers, and said unto them, ye exact usury every one of his brother. And I set a great assembly against them. The people had mortgaged themselves into bankruptcy, and the leaders of the people were taking advantage of them. And I rebuked the nobles, Nehemiah says. Verse 11, restore, I pray you, to them, even this day, their lands, their vineyards, their olive yards, and their houses, also the 100th part of the money, and of the corn, the wine, and the oil that ye exact of them. Then said they, we will restore them, and will require nothing of them, so will we do as thou sayest. Then I called the priests, and took an oath of them, that they should do according to this promise. There was injustice going on in the land of Judah, even after the captivity. And Nehemiah confronted that injustice, and he restored justice to the land in this confrontation. But that's not all of the story. Go to the 13th chapter of Nehemiah. And look at verse 4. And before this, Eliashib the priest, having the oversight of the chamber of the house of our God, was allied unto Tobiah. Remember that name from earlier? And he had prepared for him a great chamber, where aforetime they laid the meat offerings, the frankincense, and the vessels, and the tithes of the corn, the new wine, and the oil, which was commanded to be given to the Levites, and the singers, and the porters, and the offerings of the priests. The place where they brought the offerings of the people was now the special chambers of this enemy of God's people. And the oversight was one of the priestly family. Now look at verse 15. In those days saw I in Judah some treading wine presses. I'm sorry. Let's go to verse 8 first. That's a different story. Verse 8. And it grieved me sore. Therefore I cast forth all the household stuff of Tobiah out of the chamber. Then I commanded, and they cleansed the chambers, and thither brought I again the vessels of the house of God with the meat offering and the frankincense. Nehemiah threw him out of the temple, folks. And he cleansed the chambers and said, this will now be a hallowed spot for tithes and offerings to be brought in. I think that took a little courage. Now let's go to verse 15. Different story. In those days saw I in Judah some treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves, and lading asses, as also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. Verse 17, then I contended with the nobles of Judah. Now we're back with the leaders again of Judah. And said unto them, what evil thing is this that ye do, and profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers thus? And did not our God bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath. Again, he contended, didn't he, with those who were breaking God's law and encouraging the people to do so. And one last little episode, verse 23. In those days also saw I Jews that had married wives of Ashdod, of Ammon, and of Moab. Of course, God had specifically prohibited that. And their children spake half in the speech of Ashdod, and could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the language of each people. And I contended with them, and cursed them, and smote certain of them, and plucked off their hair, and made them swear by God, saying, Ye shall not give your daughters unto their sons, nor take their daughters unto your sons, or for yourselves. This man confronts, doesn't he? We would find him quite offensive in the ranks of Seventh-day Adventism today if we found him doing what I just read in verse 25 one day. Yet Nehemiah was one of the greatest leaders after the captivity that Israel ever knew. A very, very faithful man of God. But he took a stand against enemies, against leaders, against fellow Jews, against anything that dishonored God, no matter where it came from. And one last little trip through our Bible, Matthew chapter 23. The one who is the greatest revealer of the love of God ever to grace this earth. The one whose spirit is long-suffering and caring and ultimately reasonable, says some things to the people of his time. Matthew chapter 23, verses 1 and onward. Then spake Jesus to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do, but do not ye after their works. For they say and do not. For they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. But all their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries, and enlarge the borders of their garments, and love the uppermost room at feasts, and the chief seats in the synagogues, and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi. Verse 13, But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayer. Therefore ye shall receive the greater damnation. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye compass sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he is made, ye make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. Verse 27, Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which inward indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones, and of all uncleanness. Even so ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within ye are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! Because ye build the tombs of the prophets, and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous, and say, If we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers. Ye serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? That's confrontation, my brothers and sisters, by the one who had the most love in his heart of any being that has ever walked this earth. Is confrontation a biblical concept? It is not an easy concept. It is one that 90% of Seventh-day Adventists would rather do anything than that, including myself. Oh yes, there are a few people who love to confront, but they're in the minority. Most of us common folk find it very repugnant to stand up against a friend, a colleague, a leader, and say no. No. Now, there are dangers in confrontation, folks. There are dangers. It's so easy to exercise the spirit of Satan. Bitter, angry, cynical, denouncing, looking for every evil thing that can be dredged up. That's the spirit of Satan, folks. That isn't what Jesus Christ did. Confrontation, when Jesus did it, was with a heart breaking. There's a difference between sighing and crying for the abominations that are done and exulting over the latest scandal to hit our church. It is easy to exercise the spirit of Satan and think we are following the example of Jesus and Nehemiah. There's another problem. It is so easy to judge motives. Oh, we know why he did that. We know who's behind that. Folks, that's God's providence. I have no way to see into the mind of anyone else. All I can judge are actions. All I can judge are issues. All I can judge is truth versus error. I have no way to read the motives of someone that I believe is promoting error. Therefore, I must keep my mouth closed, or I am judged under the condemnation of Jesus. And so there are dangers in confrontation. Before there is any confrontation of any kind, let there be much prayer. Let there be counsel together. Let there be study. But brothers and sisters, let us not avoid the fight because it is unpleasant. What must we confront? We must confront worldliness as a tide sweeping through the ranks of Seventh-day Adventism, not just in America, but in virtually all parts of the world. Worldliness in so many areas, in which Satan has marched into our church and we haven't even watched carefully to see how much damage he has done to our own soul. Worldliness in music, in which we allow Satan's way of presenting music to infiltrate, to become part of God's way, and blend the two together so that we are helpless to tell the difference. If this could have been confronted years ago, we wouldn't be facing the difficulties we are today. Television and movie productions. There aren't many born-again Christians producing out of Hollywood or New York. There aren't many born-again Christians deciding what would be best morally for our young people to watch. The motives are different. And even when we might find a one which is relatively innocent, what were the motives of the one that was producing it? Why did he produce that particular movie, video, television production? And it really doesn't matter which it is, does it? If it comes into our homes on television or if it comes to the movie theater. If there is a hidden agenda, if there is a secret portrayal of something which is being sold through a very innocent-seeming production, it can be just as dangerous. Entertainment. What are we spending our time with? Where are we giving our interest? Could we take Jesus Christ with us proudly and happily to every place we go for entertainment? Clothes. So easy to say it's just a matter of taste. But you know, there's nothing neutral. Satan will not allow any innocent practice of mankind to remain innocent. He'll find a way to get into it. He'll find a way to get his ideas insinuated into what we put upon our bodies, so that pride and jealousy and covetousness and all sorts of emotions and feelings rise to the forefront. Yes, what we put upon our bodies is very much a decision for or against God. What we put inside our bodies is also very much a decision along those lines. The body is the temple of God, and how we treat this temple is the way we would treat all of God's creation. It is not a private matter. It is not a personal issue. It is a matter of right and wrong, of good and evil, of God and Satan in controversy. Turn to 2 Timothy with me, would you? 2 Timothy, chapter 4, I'm sorry. 2 Timothy, chapter 4, verse 10. One of Paul's saddest little sentences. For Demas hath forsaken me, having loved this present world. An awful lot of Adventists are going to forsake because they love this present world. Having loved this present world. You can't love God and this world at the same time. 1 John chapter 2. Verses 15 and 16. 1 John 2, 15. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, and here they are, folks, every temptation that you and I have ever been tempted with in the next sentence. The lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. That's it. That covers the whole realm. How could Jesus be tempted in all points like as we are when he didn't own a television set? Because there was the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life around him and within his own nature, just yearning to be pulled together as they are in you and me. And those will be the ultimate. There is nothing new under the sun. All human beings are tested on the same issues, although the circumstances may be different and the stimuli may be different, but the temptations are the same. The lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life. That's what I've been talking about in the last few moments, that we have got to confront. We've got to confront it right here in our own lives. And we've got to confront it when it harms our families, when it harms our children, and when it harms our churches. It must be confronted. What else are we going to confront? I believe that one of the most dangerous areas right now for us as Adventists is that word compromise. No, we won't give up our faith. We won't deny our faith, but we'll just give a little bit. We'll just move a little bit this way. Now, some things can be compromised, but other things can't be compromised. And we must confront compromise of truth by both members and leaders. Oh, how desperately we want to be liked. We're tired of the labels. Oh, you're just like those, and they name a few churches off. Oh, you're a cult, aren't you? Or you're like that Koresh group down there. Oh, those labels cause us to cringe, draw inward. We don't like to be singular and different, especially when it's a negative comparison that is being made. And we have an intense desire to be approved by those who do such things, to be liked by the churches around us. We want to be accepted at the highest gatherings of others who profess to be Christians. We have a fear of being called a sect. And in many, many cases, we have allowed public relations to preside over principle, to allow that desire to put our best foot forward to cause us to leave the other foot of truth dragging in the dust. We must confront compromise, brothers and sisters. Even now, we say it's too late. No, it isn't. It's not too late until we decide we're giving up. Even now. We must confront error, brothers and sisters. Error must be confronted, wherever it appears, in whatever form it appears. You know something? A lot of people are going to be saved who believe deadly error. All down through history, people have believed deadly error and will be saved in God's kingdom. Martin Luther is the perfect example. I fully expect to see Martin Luther if I get to the kingdom. But Martin Luther believed deadly errors about the character of God. Errors that would vindicate Satan's cause if they were uncorrected, would cause Satan to win the great controversy. Errors that Martin Luther believed, preached, and taught. Errors about predestination, for instance. God is an arbitrary God. He just moves us around like little pawns on a chessboard. That's what Satan said from the beginning. And here was the greatest preacher of the Reformation echoing Satan's charges against the character of God. If an infant isn't baptized immediately upon birth, it goes straight into hell. Is that the kind of God that I want to stand for at the end of time? If you don't believe like I do, I'll let the armies come and destroy you. Anabaptists, who, by the way, are much more the forerunners of Seventh-day Adventists than any other Reformation group. Martin Luther, I believe, did a great work for God, but in a very dark period of Earth's history, and believing much error that he never understood. Can that vindicate God? Or does God have to back away and say, I'll have to wait, I can't complete my purposes on this earth until I get all that error untangled, until the world knows the truth about my character? And when the world finally does know the truth about my character, then and then only can we have an ultimate challenge in which Satan and I will come into final conflict. You and I can be saved believing error if we believe it honestly, and if the light has not come to us. But you and I can never vindicate God and end sin's reign on this planet by believing and teaching error. And as long as error is continued to be taught honestly by anyone, Adventist or otherwise, just that much longer the second coming of the Lord must be delayed. Because God cannot come until His character is revealed verbally and experientially by His people. The truth about God, not Satan's lies about God, no matter how honestly believed. Only truth can vindicate God's name. And we must confront error, brothers and sisters, wherever we hear it. What kinds of error? Well, try Hebrews 4:15 for one. That's just one sample, and you know I talk about that a fair amount. For we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace. On what basis? The basis that our Lord Jesus Christ was tempted in the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And the struggle that He went through was as intense as any one of us ever go through. Only on that basis did Jesus win the great controversy over Satan. If He had avoided that conflict, no one in this universe would ever have proved that one born into this world with a nature that is turned in upon itself could ever obey the law of God. Because I haven't. Have you? And if Jesus had not come with that nature into this world, no one would have ever proved Satan a liar on that point. And we aren't one step closer to the end of the great controversy than we were when Adam rebelled in the Garden of Eden. That's an error that must be confronted, brothers and sisters, if there's any hope of winding this great controversy up. Teachings about Ellen G. White and relative principles of interpretation and selective use of the writings of a prophet must be confronted, brothers and sisters. Ignoring of counsel because it doesn't seem applicable to our time, out of date, that must be confronted, brothers and sisters. All finished on the cross, the atonement done. All done, and we're just reaping the benefits of it. Whatever is done in the heavenly sanctuary is now just the result of what Jesus did on the cross, and we are receiving good results of that in forgiveness of sins. That must be confronted, brothers and sisters. Because if God won the war 2,000 years ago, what are we doing here today? Did God just string us along for 2,000 years through a great apostasy to see what would happen? If He really won the war, and He didn't finish it back then, all that has happened since that time is His fault. And I don't worship a God like that. No. Although the sacrifice was complete on Calvary, the atonement is not completed, and will not be until the events we know as the time of Jacob's trouble and the final demonstration between good and evil. The sanctuary message, the cleansing of the sanctuary, the blotting out of sins. That's Adventism. Strip that away, and we can close our doors. That must be confronted, brothers and sisters. Can God give victory over all sin now? Can God provide the same power to me that He provided to Jesus Christ? Can God find a whole people that will live around the face of this earth that will be so loyal to Him that they in fact will die rather than sin even once against Him? Can God do that? Oh, who has done it? Are you perfect yet? That is not the issue. Can God do it? That's the issue. Can God do that? And if that is denied, that must be confronted with all the love in our hearts. It must be confronted. F.D. Nichol, writing in 1950 after a Bible conference that took place, said this: "The primary doctrines of this movement are interlocked. They are not isolated, unrelated beliefs, any one of which might be undermined or discarded without damage to the others. On the contrary, the whole structure of truth is affected if even one of them is attacked." This is a unified message, brothers and sisters. The message of Adventism cannot be stripped apart here and there on a doctrine that is not important to salvation here and one that you can have disagreements on there, and we still have Adventism and its message. This is a unified, interlinking set of beliefs that must be maintained together, or they all go down. What else must we confront? Perhaps the most deadly of all problems, apathy. Oh, it's so easy to let someone else take the heat. So easy to sit back and let someone else do it. Maybe that's the most dangerous of all our problems, is letting someone else do it. Are we really, even though we wouldn't admit it for a moment, are we really thinking of ourselves as rich and increased in goods and having need of nothing? Don't be too quick to answer that. That gets right down to the inner motives of the heart. It doesn't matter. I don't want to take sides. I don't want to get involved in this. There are problems on both sides. I'll stay neutral. Ellen White had something to say about that too. If God abhors one sin above another, of which His people are guilty, it is doing nothing in case of an emergency. Indifference and neutrality in a religious crisis is regarded of God as a grievous crime and equal to the very worst type of hostility against God. Reference is Testimonies for the Church, Volume 3, page 280. The worst type of, give it again, reference is Testimonies, Volume 3, page 280. The worst type of hostility against God is standing by because we don't like all of the bloodshed. And there is spiritual bloodshed going on, brothers and sisters. But we don't want to get involved. Let somebody else, they're extroverts, let them do it. If God abhors one sin above another, it's doing nothing in case of an emergency, and we have hit the greatest emergency in the whole history of Seventh-day Adventism. Pantheism pales to nothing beside what we're facing today. This is an emergency above all emergencies. Will we do nothing? We must confront fear, brothers and sisters. Fear. That may be behind our apathy, really. I might lose my position, my reputation, my salary, my health benefits. These are practical things, aren't they? I might lose it all if I spoke up, if I'm to say anything. I'm getting close to retirement. I don't want to jeopardize my sustentation. Others will ridicule me. Others will laugh at me. They won't understand. I might lose my influence. I might not be able to be an elder of the church and do what I need to do in the church. Plain old fear is perhaps the hidden motive that discourages most of us from confronting when we should confront. I'm guilty. I've sat back. I have kept my mouth shut when I should have spoken. I watched things happening in my beloved church that I said nothing about for years. I am part of the problem. I am part of the reason the emergency exists. A time comes to be involved, even if it's late rather than early. This ever-thrusting evil will not be stayed by assurances that all is well, that the situation is not grave, or by attempts to find non-existent common grounds, such as calls for unity among the irrevocably disunited. Such calls only encourage the advance of error, which shows no hesitancy in its steady onslaught against truth. It advances from the Ruhr to Australia, to Sudetenland, to Bohemia, while the cries of halt are lost on the ears of those who could and should act decisively to stem a tide of evil, which will place no limitations upon its own encroachments. Not loss of life as in a battlefield, but loss of everlasting life. Can we dare to trade the eternal destinies of our college-aged youth while carefully skirting the advances of those whose loyalties are most certainly foreign to Seventh-day Adventists? Will such an awful price be justified in hindsight? No longer can an indulgent church slumber on in Laodicean complacency. The call is to arms. The King calls forth for volunteers. There will not be a single conscript in this army. All volunteers must pass a stringent medical test to determine the presence of moral health and martial vigor. Their leaders must meet this advancing evil alliance head on. First, present positions must be held, and then lost ground reclaimed until there is unconditional surrender of the enemy. Then it will be said that we have taken our stand for freedom as in the olden times. If we can learn anything from our history, and our history includes what happened during World War II and the years before, it is that compromise invites disaster. With all the love of Jesus, and all the concern of Nehemiah, and all the courage of Elijah, we must interlock our arms, brothers and sisters, and say, thus far and no farther, Satan, in this beloved remnant church that we have given our lives to. By God's grace, let us do